Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Board on April the 5th, 2023. We start our meeting by stating the Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand with me.
Bless you.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This being the very first meeting after the recent election, we have to start off by electing new officers for this coming year.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint yourself, John O'Connor, as chairman of the planning board.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any other additions, recommendations? If not, then I'll start out with Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr.
Malaby.
Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Oh, what the hell, no. Yes, resounding yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
And I'll go along with it. I'll vote myself. Thank you all. I would like to nominate Mr. Dave Nelson as vice chair.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other additions, any recommendations? If not, Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Andy Myers as secretary of the planning board.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other additions? If not, Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Feinauer.
Yes.
Mr. Grenice.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
I guess, yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
You
So
did
we
want
have
that, right?
Want to pass that down to him when we get ready to do correspondence?
Okay.
And with that, for the people in the audience here, anybody that has cell phones or any electronic devices, please put them on mute or vibrate. Also, for safety purposes, we have an exit in the back of the room. We have an exit to my immediate right. Please don't take the elevator in case of emergency. If not, somebody will help you and assist to get down the stairs.
Do we want to seat John for Trumper?
I'm sorry?
Do we want to seat John?
Okay,
We have an
yes, well,
alternate.
thank you. We'll be sitting Mr. Morrison for Mr. Trumba. That's not here. So with that, I'll introduce the whole board again. Starting off with the Director of Planning, Mr. George Scoris.
Good evening.
Way in the corner in the back, the Assistant Planner,
Good evening.
Liz Robideau.
Good evening.
We got the Town Administrator Representative, Mr. Randy Chase.
Good evening.
We got a brand-new board member, Mr. Malaby. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have another full member, Mr. Feinhauer. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We have the new Town Council Representative, Mr. Grenice.
Good evening and welcome to the new board members and the chairman, vice chair, and the secretary.
Thank you. Going down, we have the man behind the curtain, Mr. Owen Provencher. Good evening. That will control anything that may be calling in. We have the town engineer, Mark LaRue.
Good evening.
We have Mr. John Morrison as an alternate, who is now seated as a full member for tonight. Good evening. We have a full member, Mr. Mark Connors.
Good evening.
We have our new secretary, Mr. Andy Myers.
Good evening.
We have our new vice chair, Mr. Dave Nelson.
Good evening.
And I'm John O'Connor, the chair. With that, is there anything else I'm missing? With that, the first item on the agenda is an annual review of cash escrow accounts. The first one is number 11-12, T-Mobile Northeast, $17,436. Number 1416, Samuel Kershaw, $44,933.22. Number 19-39, 11 Chenito Road, $22,777.20. Number 20-16, High Metals LLC, $71,597.52. Number 2020, Prime Storage LLC, $79,554.96. Number 2221, John Cooper, $15,837.12. Number 2222, Betty Cooper, $15,837.12. Number 2303, Shade Tree Farm, $22,718.88. Move to find the list of open cash escrows are held in the amounts which provide adequate security for the proposed length of the project. The amounts listed above are the ending principal and interest amounts as of February 2023.
So moved.
So we have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second. All in favor, say
Oh,
aye.
hold on.
Sorry,
I have a question. It may seem like a silly question, but is the first digit in these numbers the year in which it was established?
Yes, and that's why I was going to ask
Or
a question.
released. It could be the last release on it.
So we have some dating back as far as 2011.
Yes.
Okay, just sort of curious about how long those normally last.
Well, they could last for a very, very long time if they don't do the project or revoke their approval.
Okay.
Yep.
So I was the exact same question as Mr. Nelson, except I guess I'm asking, we usually put a length on a project, so, and I don't know that some of these have come back to be renewed or not, or
In some cases, like the T-Mobile, that's like a,
just open-ended?
it's an open-ended thing to dismantle a tower.
Okay.
And for that particular one.
Okay.
The other ones are various stages, have gone on, a long time,
Okay, but they don't have to come back if they've exceeded the
because
length
they
of
have
time.
cash.
Okay, thank you.
So we have the motion for a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Next item.
Bless you.
Sorry?
No, woman sneeze, I said bless you.
On the escrow, number 23-05, please establish escrow in the amount of $3,952.80 for the above-noted project, which is the McCarran Lot Line Adjustment, Joseph McCarran Developer. Escrow account the same. Escrow type cash escrow. Parcel ID and location 56001 13 Field Road and 52005 55 North Shore Road. This escrow account is in a non-interest bearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Question, sir?
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, so I guess maybe it's just the name of it that's throwing me off. The project name is the McCarran Lot Line Adjustment. We don't usually do escrows for lot line adjustments, do we? Or is this some actual project in association with the lot line?
You have to set the bounds. So you can escrow the bounds, or you can set them, like the stone bounds and the iron
Okay,
pins.
so
you
they're
have that
escrowing
option.
the bounds.
So they're escrowing.
That's
them,
why the amount's so small. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, so we had a motion, we had a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. The approval of minutes of March 15, 2023.
I move to approve the minutes.
So we have a motion to approve, we have a second. Any recommendations, changes, modifications? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. We got John Morrison, and Chiricello is no longer here. That passes. In the other business, we have our Town of Derry Planning Board policy and procedures.
John, correspondence.
Oops, I missed that. Correspondence, Mr.
Mr.
Secretary.
Chairman, there is no correspondence from any outside entity. There's the same list of all of the planning board members and their contact information, which is in our packets, so there's nothing new in the correspondence section.
Thank you. Now going to other business. On the review of the planning board policy and procedures, I would like everybody to review these, and any changes that you would like to make or recommendations, please forward them to Liz by next Friday so that we could have them, and we'll vote on acceptance of the policy and procedures at the next meeting.
Excuse me.
And we go into the continuation of discussion of March 15, 2023, the Town of Derry, PID 02020, 38-53 Transfer Lane, pursuant to RSA 674:54, governmental use of land, review of proposed solar installation on public land. Mr. Sioris, would you?
Yeah, we have a couple things, and I can read them for the record if you wish, just because I know some of the abutters are here and they've called us, but the basic one, the question came up last time to reach out to the town attorney, which is Matt Surge, to determine whether this use fell under a governmental land use based on his interpretation of the law, and Mr. Nelson had asked that question. So as part of our subcommittee meeting, which is Dave Nelson, John O'Connor, myself, and Liz met with the attorney last week. So we just gave you some notes that he made the determination that this particular use falls under governmental use of land, as the installation of the solar panels is for the public benefit. So based upon that, it's here for an informational meeting under that law. You can get input from the abutters, which we did. They were notified, the board gave input, and then the board has 30 days from the last meeting to provide any more input to the applicant, which in this case is Mike Fowler, representing Public Works and the solar company. So
And I'd just like to add
Yeah.
for the record, for the public to understand that Matt Surge, the attorney, is a land use attorney, so he specializes just in this type of
He
process.
does all planning and zoning boards, so he's excellent. So that was his interpretation. So that was our basic question Dave Nelson had asked. Based on that, for the public, and I have a separate email from Mike Fowler to the board, but Mike determined that Public Works will follow up with any abutter to reach out with them with any questions or concerns. I know Mr. Brown was at the last meeting, and Mr. Brown indicated that maybe Mike Fowler could meet with him. And I know I've spoken to Donna Fredericks, I think a couple of times. Donna's here, back from Florida. So Mike Fowler will reach out if they want to meet with Mike, our Public Works Director, and answer any questions. The other key thing is the board has to determine if you feel a site plan submitted is required based on a legal opinion, and we have a motion if you decide to move that this is a governmental use. So separate from that, the second email the board has is from Mike Fowler, Public Works Director, to follow up some of the questions from the last meeting. Mr. Chairman, I didn't know if you want to read Mike's questions
Why
into
don't
the
we
record.
do that so that both those that are here
Okay.
and they may be able to pull a copy off the back, but it's for the public to
Okay,
hear too.
let me do that, and then you guys will have to go back and decide if you want a full-blown site plan or not based on the attorney's opinion. That's a separate motion. Okay. All right, so let me just read Mike Fowler. This is to the Planning Board, Public Works Director, as a follow-up to the March 15th Planning Board meeting, where we provided the board with information of the town's plan to build a solar panel field on the municipal landfill. He will not be here tonight. He said there has been some additional discussion of the comments from the planning board members and the abutters from the last meeting, and he gave the responses based on those three questions. Number one, applicability of the governmental use, RSA 674-54. We'd be looking for planning board concurrence with the legal opinion that a full site plan review is not required, as the production of electricity is a permissible governmental use under this statute. Number two, abutter visual concerns. I think that was brought up from Mr. Brown as well. A further review of the proposed site indicates that the elevation of the existing landfill, excuse me, plus the 10 to 12 feet high solar panel frame would be visible from Kendall Pond Road. There is no practical way to visually buffer the panels. There has been no outreach to the abutter at 1 Michael Ave, as the issue was directed toward past construction of the cap landfill section in the 1980s and 1990s. Number three, the glare, with a south-southwest alignment of the panels and the general concept that the panels will absorb the sunlight as opposed to reflecting it, there does not appear to be any impact to abutters or motorists. And then lastly, the proposal will be subject to submission of multiple permit applications to the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services once the site plan has been completed after confirmation of items 1 and number 3. So that was from our Public Works Director. I'll turn it back to the board to make that determination that you would have to make a motion that this is not a formal site plan. It follows the statute that the attorney recommended.
So I'm going to open it up to the board for questions. So we're going to have Mr. Connors has his hand first, then Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess a couple of questions. Just want to understand, so we do have a formal document from the lawyer that's indicating this is a government use, so if someone did take issue with that, and it goes to court, there's a document, there's basically a ruling by our town attorney.
We have
that
an
says-
email.
Yeah, I'll defer to.
I'm sorry, from a recommendation would be a letterhead from Drummond, and that's Woodsman, that's who he works.
It was verbal, and that's why we summarized, and David and John were there. But if you want for the record, I don't have a problem with that.
Just covering us as a planning board that we did get a legal
Yeah.
opinion and it's valid, so I do see the document. And I guess the other question with the butter visual concerns, went out there again and kind of took another look at that. I agree, where the landfill is already up, you're going to have 10 to 12 feet on top of that. It's going to be very difficult to do anything, without 100-year-old trees that would actually, block that view. I also do note, though, that the abutters across the street do have significant frontage and could perhaps, some of them actually already have some trees that, give them some visual. So it's a tough one. It definitely impacts the abutters, but there's also a public benefit here. So, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last sentence in the recommended motion says, "A site restoration plan should be included with the project documents." Should kind of means, yeah, it should, but it doesn't have to be. So is that a requirement or is that a suggestion, Mr. Sears?
I think it probably should be shall. I think Mike would like to do that as best as he can. In the like he said last time, in the practical sense, it may be difficult to do a full-blown buffer, but I think that would be a requirement that I think the board can say that you should require that.
Why don't we compromise and change should to will?
It's sorry, will be included. That's
Yeah.
perfect. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing, just for the record, I know a couple of the abutters here. Please reach out to Mike Fowler and meet with Mike. He can sit down individually with you and answer some of your questions too, okay? I talked to Mike a couple of days ago.
Typical of all the RSAs and the administrative rules, the word shall usually takes predominance, and I think would cover the same thing you want.
If you want to promote it to shall, I won't object.
And I just want to make sure anybody on this
If
side.
anybody else?
I had a question.
Yes, Andy.
My question is this, and this is for George. I don't remember this. I don't remember the last meeting as clearly as I should, but I thought that the proposal wasn't that the town of Derry is going to be operating a solar plant. My understanding is we're leasing this, and this other company is going to come in and place the panels, and the other company is going to provide the energy, correct?
Yeah, the town is leasing that property to this company from, I think Mike said they're Encore.
Right.
But I think the question, Andy, was, what's the public benefit? Because as you know, if the town was doing a project, governmental school districts, state agencies, they're exempt from their own rules and regulations. I know that sounds horrible to say, but that's the way the statute is written. So you come to the planning board. We've had that done in schools, libraries in the past. But the state legislature changed that law several years ago and said, if you lease your town property or a building or land to someone that's not a governmental unit, they have to comply to the local regulations and ordinances, come to the planning board, have a meeting, and then the planning board has to determine whether you want a full-blown site plan. When Dave Nelson said maybe we should get a legal opinion, based on the use of that electricity, the town will be purchasing that for our 29 buildings and then other stuff. It's a public benefit for the town of Derry, and that's how he interpreted it. And Dave, correct me if I missed anything.
So I think to maybe clarify, the land use regulation regulates the use, and the use is to generate electricity for the benefit of the town under contract. So the town does have some skin in the game.
No, all right, I understand. My question was, and you answered it, thank you. My question really was based on if the town is only leasing the property, the town leases property every day of the week. So the other thing that I would say, and I obviously...
Also, what's called a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
They are paying something back to the town, too.
Right, but the other thing I was going to say is, and I haven't done my research in New Hampshire, but in Massachusetts, there are municipalities that actually do generate their own power. And so, I mean, Mass Municipal Wholesale Electric Corporation was one of them. I don't know if they're still doing it, but there are other municipalities in Massachusetts that do, in fact, generate electricity, whether it's solar or burning trash or other ways that they generate their own electricity or regional electricity. So I don't see a question as to whether this is a municipal function or not, where it is in other states. I mean, it's just
The
a
benefit
border.
that the town of Derry gains from them leasing it to this organization is that municipalities, the government uses, cannot get state or federal rebates. They can, so we get the benefit of the amount of money that they're going to gain on the rebates and putting in the solar panels under the 25-year lease that we're doing. We have an option to buy it within 5 or 7 years after initiation.
That's fine, but what I'm saying is I don't see why the generation of electricity has to be pushed away as a municipal function.
It's only because the law was just recently initiated, because I was part of the ones that co-signed
Okay.
this particular law here. And because prior to that, we couldn't get anything more than less than 1 meg. Now, the governor had signed last year a 5 meg for municipalities only. There's bills going through the State House right now that businesses can slowly go into a 5 meg or maybe even a bit higher. But that was one of the issues. Only municipalities can go up to a 5 meg.
But my follow-up question would then be, that talks to the prohibitions and the limits and the funding and getting a mix of funding, but do any of the things that you just mentioned in terms of the state RSAs, do any of those say that generation of electricity cannot be a municipal function?
Yes.
They do. They
Yes.
come right out and say that they really.
Yeah,
All right,
we've been fighting these bills for the last 5 terms that I've been up there.
fighting against them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Surprisingly. Mr. Connors up, and then back to Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, so just two questions. I want to make sure I'm fully understanding. The electricity that's going to be generated from this is to power town buildings and you know, it's staying within the
Municipality
town. It's not as though we're leasing this to a company who's going to go off and make a whole bunch of money. It's coming back to the town. So I just want, for the public, that's one key piece here as to the governmental benefit, I think. The other question, and this might be from Mr. LaRue's site plan, my understanding from the presentation is that the bases of these are going to be like concrete blocks that are set on the cap. There's really no digging into the cap, there's no foundation. So would we typically need a site plan for something that's being placed on a property versus a physical construction of a building or that sort of thing? I guess that's the only thing that I would be basing my decision as to whether a site plan would be needed, since they are temporary, I guess, to some degree.
I still think they would definitely need a site plan. You have to be able to arrange some sort of layout, and then there would also have to be a plan to run cables and to.
So I guess why are we even questioning whether the planning board should say whether or not there is a full site plan review if our town engineer feels that there should be? Is there a reason why we're even voting on this, or?
Well, I mean, there's going to be a plan. It doesn't have to be a
Full site plan.
It doesn't have to be a vetted site plan by the planning board. I'm saying, just like any other project, you know, if you're doing a home improvement project, you need a plan.
Yeah, I guess we saw something last time. We had a general plan that showed where the power lines were going and that sort of thing. So maybe it's my disconnect of a full site plan, what does that entail versus what we've already seen, which is a plan that showed where everything was going to be laid out and where the power lines and the poles were. What additional piece are we missing here?
So basically, it comes down to, Mr. Connors, whether the planning board has the jurisdiction to compel a site plan review and make binding conditions upon its approval or not.
Okay. So if we do the full site plan, then we can say, you got to change this, you got to do that, versus just saying, okay.
Right, and
Gotcha.
to address Mr. Meyer's comment, New Hampshire is not a home rule state, so it's not enough to not find an ordinance or statute that says a municipality can't do something. Municipalities can do nothing unless they find explicit permission in the statutes to do it.
Understood.
Okay, any other further questions from the board? Did we have a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would like to move to find that that the solar project, as presented, is a governmental use of land. A site plan submittal is not required, and documentation should be executed by the town of Derry and Encore Renewable Energy that states Encore is responsible for the removal of infrastructure and restoration of the site at the end of the lease term. A site restoration plan shall be included with the project documents.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further comment, Mr. Connors?
Just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So Dave, you're saying, you're doing, because the motion in front of us had an is or an is not, so you were choosing
He is not.
is not required, so we're not going to require a full site plan submittal. That's the motion on the.
Yeah, that's based on the legal opinion, and if the determination is made that it is a governmental use of land, then we're not able to compel anything other than the informal consultation we already had.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Melleby?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Grenier?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
I'm going to say yes. Yeah, I think the full site plan wouldn't hurt, but based on Mr. Nelson raising the issue and his originally with the governmental use and being fully satisfied and his knowledge of everything going back for a long time, I'm going to side with him on this.
Mr. Meyer?
I see global warming as an existential crisis, and so I would like to see this expedited as quickly as possible, and for that reason, I vote yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, and just for the public to be aware of, that once this is initiated, then the town of Derry will receive the kilowatts at 6 cents a kilowatt for the next 25 years. Currently, we're all probably paying between 20 to 22 cents a kilowatt. So that's going to be a huge savings for the town for the next 25 years.
John, can I just say one more thing too, John?
sorry,
Yeah, no, but for the Mr. Lavoy and Donna Fredericks and Mr. Brown, you please reach out to Mike Fowler. Mike said that he wants to sit down with you one-on-one. So just, reach out to Mike Fowler, Public Works Director, and he can go over more detail of the plans and for Mr. Brown too, okay? Or anybody else. If I forget anybody, I apologize.
Okay, under Planning Director and Chairman updates. Do you have anything, George?
I have none.
I've got a couple.
The budget process starts on Tuesday night with the town council, so hopefully they'll approve our planning budget on Tuesday night. We have our council rep here. That's all I have.
One of the items I have is to request from Liz, especially for the new members, to resend out what's called the Riggins Rules, and that gives you procedures for how to act as a planning board. So if we could resend those out. And there's another reminder that the Office of Planning and Development has a spring planning zoning conference on Saturday, April 29th. It's virtual, and it's usually from 8:45 to 3:30, and there are multiple subjects, if anybody wants to attend that there. And again, as a reminder, and even for the new people are on here too, and I forgot to introduce Dan Healy, also a new alternate. I'm used to seeing him as a town clerk there, so anyway, on this here, we have a requirement that we have to at least attend one of the webinars or one of the training sessions related to planning. So, and Liz has been pretty good at sending out information on that. And webinars are usually a luncheon, it's like a 1 hour, and some are virtual, some can be at site. So with that, we're going to go into the next item.
Mr. Chair, I just didn't know if you wanted to mention that we do now still have a vacancy on the alternate too.
That's why we got one more.
So if we're looking for
Anybody out in the audience and on TV land, we are looking for another alternate to fill our slate. We've had a pretty good board for the last few years, so we're still looking to continue it. And thanks for the recent ones that just recently stepped up. So on the public hearing to amend the Town of Derry zoning ordinance, Article 19, Independent Adult Community Overlay District, specifically provisions related to the age of residence and general development standards. Elizabeth Robideau helped put a lot of this together with some of the subcommittees, so I'm going to let her take the lead on this one, and George has a break.
You get the next one, it's easier.
Liz, take it.
All right. So as the board is aware, the town had to be in compliance with HB 1661, which basically said that anything we had in our independent adult overlay district would also apply to any workforce housing development that came in, and that would be effective as of July 1st of 2023. So as part of that, the board reviewed the independent overlay, and there were some items in there that the board was not quite in compliance with, so we've corrected that. And this has had legal review, and so the recommendation would be to move forward with the changes. So to kind of review the changes, what we did was we noted that there's not really, we've had a declining school population, so we removed the wording that said we wanted a development that would have less impact on the school system. We've amended our definitions in the independent, actually for what qualifies as an independent adult community, to include communities that are 62 and older and those that are 55 and older. We also took out the prohibition that anyone under the age of 18 couldn't live there, because that was kind of, that was a fair housing issue. Locations remain the same. The lot size requirements remain the same. We didn't change that. And that's pretty much it as we go through. I can take a quick peek through. So if, for independent adult community, you're either 62 years or older or 55 and older. And that goes along with the federal definitions. The other thing that we did add, which was important, is that 80% of the occupied units would have to be occupied by someone who's 55 years or older, but we also allow 20% to not be. So the housing isn't restricted. And that's really it. Other than that, there were some tweaks to, the wording, just to make sure it said single-family detached rather than single-family, and that was it.
Okay, so the next procedure would be to request to open up the public hearing, and then we would close the public hearing, we come back to the board, and then we can make a motion whether to move this forward to the town council.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Panisse?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Myers? Yes. Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, the public hearing is open. And also want to check with Mr. Prevention if there's anybody online. You can always call 646-558-8656. The meeting ID is 754-663-912. So seeing nobody on there, the public hearing is now open. If you wish to speak on this particular overlay, then please come forward, state your name and address.
Seeing none, rise online, Mr. Chair.
Okay?
Seeing no one leaping to the forefront. Take on Mr. McEachran's role. A move to close the public hearing.
So do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second that. But you can't replace Jim.
No, I know.
No, we did.
Just a little nod to Jim. Miss him already.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we have another motion to, Mr.
I
Nelson?
wanted to add one more item. Ms. Robideau explained about the 55 and over, and then the 62 and over. 62 and over has always been allowed under federal fair housing, but we didn't actually have those provisions in our zoning ordinance before. The difference is 55 and older can only be restricted to 80% qualifying applicants However, the 62 and over can be restricted to 100% qualifying applicants. And so we have the option for folks who want to have an all-senior housing project to opt for the 62 and over as opposed to the 55 and over. So now you have two choices.
Appreciate you explaining that. Mr. Connors, do you have a question?
I think it's just a minor typo, and it may be me. I think under the subsection 2, the covenants for the community, so second page, we had a bit of language in there that then went on to kind of repeat what was said, and therefore we were saying the intent required under this sub-paragraph. I think it needs to be paragraph now because it's referring to the whole section 2 paragraph now, right? Not the sub-paragraph 2-2, Liz. I think just creates a circular reference, I think, if I'm correct.
So that would be a friendly amendment, Liz?
Okay.
So we have a motion to,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion.
go ahead.
Move to accept the proposed amendments to the Town of Derry zoning ordinance Article 19, Independent Adult Community Overlay District as noted this evening, and move the amendments forwarded to the Town Council for consideration and approval.
I'll second. A question, just to clarify for the public in the record, the changing of sub-paragraph to paragraph, I think, is a Scribner error. It's editorial. I don't believe that requires us to have another public hearing.
Right, okay.
It's
editorial.
Scrivener, yeah.
Very good, excellent catch. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhaus?
Yes.
Mr. Grenice?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. This now moves on to Town Council.
Thank you.
You get to explain that. I will. Okay, going to the next public hearing, it's Golden Acres Land Trust, Red Tundra LLC trustee, PID 17005, 356 Island Pond Road, the acceptance and review of a 2-lot subdivision. So with that, Judge?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. As you indicated, the applicant is Golden Acres Land Trust, Red Tundra LLC trustee, and the property is located at 356 Island Pond Road. The purpose of the plan is for a 2-lot subdivision located in the low-density residential district. Back on May 20th of 2021, the Zoning Board of Adjustment granted a variance to allow for the lots to have the less than required area frontage and lot width. It's a 3-acre zone down that part of town, so one of the parcels will be 3 acres. The other one that obtained the variance will be for 2.85 acres. There is an existing single-family home on the parcel today, and there'll be just one new building lot being created. All town departments have signed and reviewed the plan, which includes fire, police, public works, and code enforcement. There are waivers for the underground utilities, your driveway access, and I'll let the engineer explain that in more detail. They had 3 state permits that they needed to obtain. They have received their state subdivision approval from New Hampshire DES. They also obtained their state wetlands permit and then non-site specific. And last week, we obtained the New Hampshire DOT, issued the driveway permit for the new people on the board. Island Pond Road is a state road, so the state jurisdiction, they determined on the driveway. We received a copy of that approval last week. Staff would recommend approval of both the waiver request and the subdivision plan. I'll turn it over to the engineer, Nick Loring, and Attorney Foy is also here if there's any questions. So Nick, if you want to come up, you're here. Okay, Nick, sorry, thank you.
So again, please identify yourself and the company and go through the process.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Loring. I'm with Benchmark LLC. We're the engineers on the project. We're here on behalf of the owner and applicant, the Golden Acres Land Trust. Their property is 356 Island Pond Road. It's approximately about a 5.8 acre parcel of land on the east side of Island Pond Road. It has the low density residential zone. So as Mr. Soros stated earlier, there was a variance that was granted in May of 2021 to allow the northerly lot to have less than the required frontage and lot area. And as part of that variance application, it was determined that the house would be constructed behind where the lot meets the 200-foot setback requirement, and that's why it's placed where it is, and there is a line on that plan showing where the 200 feet meets, and it's approximately 415 feet back. That's just an offset of the right-of-way line. There is in the south corner of the lot, there's currently an existing dwelling, driveway, and a well there, some utility improvements. That we're proposing to keep that, the southerly lot will have that existing dwelling on it, and the new dwelling will be constructed on that northerly lot. As part of the application, we will have a shared driveway. This Island Pond Road, since it's under the jurisdiction of New Hampshire DOT, they do limit the amount of curb cuts. So to meet their requirements, we're removing that existing driveway that's currently there that serves the existing residents, and there'll be a shared driveway slightly to the north. And that shared driveway will be for accessing both lots. And there will be a significant amount of, we've cut back, the owners had some of the trees removed there, and in order to achieve sight distance, if anyone's familiar with that corner there, right off of the edge of pavement, there's some stone retaining walls. Then those will be removed, so the new driveway will meet Town of Derry and DOT's sight distance requirements. And there is a easement for the portion of the driveway that'll be shared. That will something that'll be recorded with the subdivision, and it'll have certain items in it that'll just clarify maintenance for any owners and to prevent any potential issues in the future with anyone, so the owners know what their responsibilities are as far as the shared driveway goes. There are 3 state permits. We have obtained all 3. The first one is for the wetlands permit for the driveway crossing. We did meet with Conservation Commission. We did a site walk prior to filing that application this spring. So we have received approval from New Hampshire Department of the Wetlands Bureau. The driveway permit from DOT, we have received that approval for the construction of that new driveway. And we also have state subdivision approval. And the 2 waivers, I'll go into a little more detail about those. The first is about the driveway access. So that's in the land development control regulations in section 170, 25A5. The regulation requires that driveways have access through their own frontage. And since Island Pond Road, as stated earlier, is a state road, DOT has jurisdiction over those access and curb cuts. So in order to meet their requirements, we're proposing to have the shared driveway, so there's 1 point of access on the property. And the second deals with underground utilities. So section 170, 30A requires all new lots to be serviced by underground utilities. So we're asking for a waiver to that requirement to allow overhead utilities to service the new lot, the northerly lot. We're asking for this. The majority of homes on Island Pond Road have overhead services. There's overhead lines in the street now. And it just it would give the owner the flexibility when working with the power company to either go overhead. It's not saying they won't go underground, but it gives them more options and flexibility when they run power, because the driveway is about 600 feet long. So that would give them the option to go either overhead or underground. So that's everything I have. Be more than happy to answer any questions that the board may have at this time.
Typically, what we do at this point is that we'll ask you to step back, and we'll open up the public hearing.
No, we got to move to accept jurisdiction. So, Mr. Chairman, I move to accept jurisdiction of the two-lot subdivision plan before the Board for Golden Acres Land Trust, PID 17005-356 Island Pond Road.
Do you have a motion?
Second.
And we have a second. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauser?
Yes.
Mr. Cornelius?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes, for jurisdiction.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So
And
we've
Mr. Chairman, I
accepted your-
further move to pursuant to RSA 36:56, that the board finds that the proposal as presented at this time meets the definition of a development of regional impact. Just a reminder, we always make that in the affirmative.
So we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Mr. Chase?
No. Yeah, I do not believe that it meets the definition of a regional impact.
Okay, Mr. Malaby?
No, for the same reasons, Mr. Chase.
Mr. Feinau?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. Cornelius?
No, for the same reasons.
Mr. Morrison?
No, for the same reasons.
Connors?
No regional impact.
Mr. Myers?
This is a very localized kind of a thing, and I don't see it having impact outside of those two lots. So no.
Okay, Mr. Nelson?
No regional impact.
And I believe also no regional impact, so that motion passes. Now we go to opening the public hearing.
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Feinau?
Yes.
Mr. Cornelius?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We now open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak in favor or oppose of this particular project, please come forward and state your name and address. And Mr. Pimenter, is there anybody online?
Seeing none rise at this time, Mr. Chair.
I think he wants to come up.
And again, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Neil Hitter. We're at 354 Island Pond Road, north of Butter to that property. One statement was made, we were just surprised, the structure right now was stated that it's going to remain there. I don't care one way or the other. Oh, by the way, we're in favor of this, so I'm just clarifying a few things. That house is in rough shape. Is it coming down? I guess.
We'll have the architect or the engineer speak to that
Because that was
afterwards.
supposed to go back, there was frontage, but again, I've been staring at that house for 40 years, so it won't make any difference to me.
I don't believe the house is able to
Ma'am,
be rehabbed.
can we wait, because a lot of you come up and talk, because the people can't hear you speak?
And the only other thing, and we brought this up with the zoning board, is my land drops off very abruptly on the lot line. And my only concern is that I don't have a lot of wash coming down. And when we moved in, it was a horse pasture, and on some heavy rains, there was stuff would come down into my backyard. And it's probably a 20% grade in a short period of time. So I brought that up at the zoning board. I just want to make that aware again, is that I don't want stuff in my yard if I don't have to have it. So,
Okay, thank you.
and I think that's it. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Ma'am, would you like to come up and,
I was just going to...
you need to identify yourself?
I'm Melissa DeFrida with DePietro Group Real Estate. I've been working with Nick from Benchmark. So in regards to the house, is it a tear down? Most...
If we can ensure proximity to the microphone.
Yeah, you actually have to speak to your TD
I'm not
audience.
doing a great job so far. How's that? Is that better? Melissa DeFrida with DePietro Group Real Estate, working with Nick on this project, and I just wanted to comment on the house being a tear down. I don't foresee that being rehabbed. So yes, the plan is to have it torn down and build a new structure.
Okay, thank you. Did you have your hand up?
Oh, I have some questions. I didn't know, it's public though, right?
still have
Right
the
now?
public hearing.
It hasn't come back to
We'll
us
come
yet?
back.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Anybody else wishing to speak?
Seeing none rise online.
Okay. Engineer Nick, want to come back and address those two issues?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
So we have a motion to close. And we have a second. Starting with Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Guinice?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. The public hearing is now closed. Nick, you have the floor.
So address a couple of those concerns. I think Ms. Jeffrey, Melissa had a point about the existing structure. We were just under the impression it's depending on what happens with the lot. You know, there are people that will rehab houses. You know, if they state it's their intention to tear it down, then they will go through the proper permits through building department and the demolition permits to have the house removed. The second issue for the runoff towards the abutter, that existing driveway, the grade along Island Pond Road is coming off of the Island Pond Road. There's a pretty good cut for that driveway. Sheet 3 shows the driveway profile. So for the first 200 feet, that driveway is going to be in a cut, and it'll take a lot of that water that's flowing towards the abutter, and it'll bring it down towards the street. Drainage, we're putting some ditches in there, so some of that area would be diverted to the front, and the rest of it, the driveway is at grade. It's really not. Once it gets up to out of the cut, it's at grade, so it'll shouldn't change much of the drainage patterns in that area. So,
Mr. LaRue, any comments from DPW?
Nope, all the issues or concerns we had during TRC were addressed on the plan, and it's fairly complete.
Okay. Coming back to the board now. Mr. Connors?
Yeah, I guess just stating, I wish I had seen this one when it was before the ZBA, and I guess we have to live with what's been done here. I'm a little baffled. Reading some of the comments about leaving one of the lots at 200 frontage and having the other at less than 100, just because they were trying to maintain the existing lot. I guess that might make sense to me if that existing home was going to be continually occupied, and that's why they wanted to do it. But now we're talking about knocking down the old house anyway, and then they're looking to do a joint driveway, which we kind of frown upon for the most part, and we've had some issues with that in other areas. Seems like they had 300 feet of frontage that they could have divided 150 and 150, and then had these be true separate lots with driveways. I guess, I guess the ZBA has made the ruling, so we're bound by that, but I'm having a hard time understanding where they met the 5 criteria that a ZBA ruling needs to meet, especially if this house is being torn down and they're basically essentially building 2 brand new homes here. So I'm not sure that I like it, but I guess we're handcuffed by that already, right?
ZBA already ruled.
Okay.
Judge?
I appreciate what Mark's saying. Just for some of the new members, a couple of things, Mark, and that comes up all the time in the driveway. Island Pond Road, it's a weird situation, but that's a state road. And you're right, we traditionally don't like to have common driveways, and Mark can attest to that. But the DOT, that's their road, so that's like Nick said, and they want the shared driveway. So they overrule the towns in this particular road.
So can I ask
We also talked about the easement going on there, so they'll have an easement responsibility of both parties.
That's what, okay, so that agreement's going to be there.
The Attorney Foy's in the audience, and he has documents ready to do driveway easements, so he's here in case there are any questions, but that will have to be recorded with the plan.
You'll see that in the waiver.
All right, and we're just dealing with this we're not dealing with the buildings yet. We're going to see them again when they come for each of these houses or not?
No, you wouldn't. That's not a planning board requirement, that if the houses are torn down or rebuilt, that the planning board doesn't look at houses, only like commercial buildings, obviously, but if a house is built.
Can I just ask a general question? Is the torn down house, I mean, from where they're putting the driveway, at least on the plan we have, it would appear that torn down house would be rebuilt in the same spot, but the other one's being built way back in the lot. Is there all of a sudden a house that's built somewhere else on the lot, or do we have any control over that or not?
No, only in the sense of and Nick can speak to this, but generically, you have a house, you have to have your septic down there because there's no water and sewer, so your septic has to be 125 feet from the well. So if you have good soils for your septic, then you have your well location. In theory, a house can go almost anywhere.
So the reason I ask is we're being given a set of plans that has that joint driveway on it, and we're being asked to say okay to that joint driveway, but we've just been told that that house is basically coming down. So is that really where the driveway has to be in the end, or can they just put a joint driveway going anywhere on the other property that they want once we give them this ruling?
No, because the curb cut came from the state.
Yeah.
No, but the split off, I guess, going over into this lower lot, it's showing very clearly what the plan is, but they're saying that house is coming down. So if they decide to put the house now back in the middle of the lot, that driveway that we're voting on isn't really what we're voting. We're just voting that they can have a split driveway. The picture means nothing,
Yeah,
right?
I hear what you're saying.
Really look at the print.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean,
George, one of the issues is the fact that there's not many places they can put a building. Look at the radius
Yeah.
of where the well is, and then look at the septic system, and then you hit the wetlands up above.
I think they've
So
got plenty
they're
of room to
pretty well-
redesign the whole, this is the bigger lot. They got plenty of room to do what they want once this is approved, is my point.
I
So
know, it's a great point, Mark, and in theory, we can't.
That's what I said. We don't have jurisdiction. I'm just asking a
Let's
question.
just say 4 months from now or a year from now,
Yep.
those two lots are legal lots of record, and a new builder or developer comes in, or a new owner comes in, yeah, they could go to the state and say, you know what, I want to get a new or amended curb cut, I'm going to move my driveways. But again, they can only have one for those two properties, but
Right.
in theory, yes, that could happen.
Just again, this picture means nothing. We're voting on giving them a
Yeah.
split, a variance for a split driveway, and then.
Yeah. And the other question, if I may, for the new members, just to give you some real quick history, all of East Derry, particularly that part of town, when I started here, that was 1 acre zoning everywhere out there. So you only needed a 1 acre lot and 125 feet of road frontage. As David can attest to, we created that 3 acre zone out there. So now it's common to see people coming 25 years later saying, everything around me is 1 acre. I want to create a new subdivision, but I don't meet the 3 acres. So you're seeing more and more of that.
Sure. Yeah.
Just, that's
Understand.
what happened.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further questions? Let me get Mr. LaRue, and then we'll come.
I just wanted to point out that, again, the spot of the driveway in the state right-of-way is set by the plan, as well as the crossing of the wetland by the wetland permit. They can't cross it any other place. They have to cross it at the narrowest spot that was
already locked in.
approved. So they're locked at those 2 points, but anything else is malleable on the site.
Okay.
Thank you. Myers?
I think Mr. LaRue answered my question, but I'm not sure. I heard everything that was said about going to the state, and the NHDOT has to approve the driveway, and that's set in stone. We can't do anything about it. I understand that. But did you just answer my question? Is there some topographical reason why the driveway has to be in the upper lot? Why can't it be in the center equally
It's
on both lots?
It has to do with grades, elevations.
Yeah, okay, all right. And I just had one other question. I also understand, sir, that all the other homes in that area are serviced by overhead utilities, but I also know what people say when all the other kids or people are doing something. If there's a new regulation that utilities should be buried, why not set a precedent and bury the utilities? We just had a bad storm 2.5 weeks ago, and a lot of Derry was out of power. Wouldn't it be better to set a precedent and put the utilities underground?
Yeah, this is, what the utilities will most likely follow the driveway. From being out there, anything before the wetland, there's really no significantly large trees. There's a few along the right-of-way, but the stuff for the majority of that driveway up to the wetland crossing is fairly small, and the utilities will follow that driveway. So if and it's on their property, so if there was any maintenance, they'd have the right to trim and cut all the trees to keep those lines, so they don't have any issues.
So I have two questions.
Ms. Feinhardt.
So why don't we want to bury the power lines? Is cost or?
Cost and the flexibility, just to be able to cross the wetland crossing to be able to go overhead with that. Typically what we see on lots like this is there be some type of hybrid, like it'll go overhead till 150 feet from the house, and then they'll go underground to the house. But yeah, the cost is really the main thing, and availability, depending on how you hit some of the difficulty in getting the transformers, it has been an issue on some developments. So if you have pole mount transformer versus ground one, sometimes if you go either way, it's a significant time difference to get those.
And this one, if they cover it.
Okay, and then my second question, just following up with what Mr. Hitter's concerns were with runoff. I understand in the current configuration with the house that is likely to be torn down, runoff is not a problem right now. Does this get addressed at the plan approval for the new house construction? Should there be a provision for this now, or?
Typically, they'll just apply for a building permit to put the house in, and they'll have to comply with the code enforcement inspections. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's any regulation on how they grade their lot, except that they can't create a hazard for abutters. That'll be the
Say
thing.
that the driveway will actually deflect a lot of that water
Right.
out to the main street and into the drain out there?
Yeah, so anything, if you look at the proposed driveway, the first 200 feet is in a cut, so no water up until about where it says, I'm just trying to think on the plan here, where it first intersects a tree line, there's a 14-foot dimension. It's past that where there's a label that says proposed driveway.
Yes.
Roughly about in that area is the high point of the driveway. So anything between Island Pond Road and that 200 label on the driveway is in a cut. So any water from up above that drains in that direction will hit that driveway and go out to the street ditches. So it wouldn't flow towards the abutting house. So any improvements in that area would flow towards Island Pond Road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chase?
I have two questions for Mr. LaRue. Your department is all set with the overhead line waivers? You have no misgivings on that?
My standard answer on waivers is that we like to be neutral on the waivers and let the board decide on the merits of the hardship of the waivers.
Okay. And
I heard the points about the electrical line being, it is a long line, and I know that electrical components are hard to come by based on conversations with Eversource. But at the same time, there's two sides to the coin, obviously, for going overhead and going under. Obviously, overhead is more likely to be impacted by storms. Underground is less sightly, but there is a cost associated with going underground. And with a long driveway of this magnitude, I believe they would possibly need two transformers, because I don't know if they can go the full 600 feet on a transformer. I'm not sure of that.
Okay. And the second question I have, to his point on the drainage, there's potentially an awful lot of water coming down that driveway, dumping out on the Island Pond Road, which has no closed drainage system. In the wintertime, could present a problem.
Well, we did discuss that at length during TRC, and I know Nick also met with the DOT representative at the site. And what I thought and what they also observed is that everything kind of pitches towards the north of the driveway and subtly follows back, sloping down towards the wetland.
Okay.
So it has a natural flow already. So any additional flow will actually be contained in the site.
Okay.
And just let the board know that some of us met with a couple of engineers last weekend. Eversource is stating that transformers are 1 year behind. So a lot of developers didn't want to hear that. So, I'm sorry, Mr. Connors?
Yeah, I thought maybe Randy would ask the question, but maybe he's comfortable with it. Fire, I mean, with the length of that driveway that they're meeting the turnarounds, the fire suppression, if it's that far off the road, all that stuff is taken care of?
I believe that was addressed with the fire department's comments with the hammerhead at the end of the driveway.
Yeah,
Yeah, I saw it, I just didn't look that big to me, so thanks. Yep, that's fine. Usually you see that in the TRC notes. I didn't see it specifically called out, and I didn't see sprinklers called out.
Yes, it is.
And the houses are sprinkled.
Okay, thanks. Good.
Okay. Seeing no further questions, we're going on to grant waivers. We'll take one at a time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I would like to, for the first waiver, move to grant a waiver from LDCR, Section 17025A Alpha 5, to allow a common driveway on Island Pond Road is under state jurisdiction, and all driveways and curb cuts are approved by NHDOT. Additionally, a driveway easement will be recorded which defines the easement location and shared maintenance agreement. After review of the waiver request, the board finds specific circumstances relative to the plan or conditions of the land in such plan indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Go with Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Ganese.
Yes.
Mr. Morrison.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes, I think we're,
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. First one's been approved. Next.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to move to grant a waiver from LDCR Section 170-31A Alpha to allow overhead utilities, as this is a frontage lot on existing road, and a majority of the homes in the area are serviced by overhead utilities. After review of the waiver request, the board finds that strict conformity to the regulations would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Only due to the fact of the wetland crossing, less intrusion on the wetlands, and the possible delay in getting components.
Good point. Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Ganese.
Yes, for the same reason, Mr. Chase.
Mr. Morrison.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
I'll vote yes, although if they're building 2 new houses, I'd be putting underground utilities.
I'm going to vote no, because if all the other, just because all the other homes in the area are serviced by overhead utilities doesn't, in my mind, justify it. I don't think there's a hardship. Just money isn't necessarily always legally a hardship. And if there's a regulation that requires that new lots be serviced by underground utilities, this lot should be serviced by an underground utility, so I vote no.
Okay, Mr. Nelson.
I'm going to vote yes. I read the section involved, and it seems traditional for, multi-lot standard subdivisions. But I'll be honest with you, I'm very sympathetic to granting the waiver because in an infill subdivision, in an area of this age with all overhead lines, I don't see any valid public purpose in enforcing it, so I'm going to vote yes.
And the chair's going to vote yes also, so that motion passes. Finding of facts.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move that the board finds that the proposed plan does not significantly alter existing conditions which would affect access to the lots, ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood remains unchanged. The board finds that the proposed plan provides safe and efficient vehicular access, and design and construction of the driveways are adequate to accommodate the anticipated volume of traffic proposed by the development. The board finds the frontage is adequate, as a variance was granted on May 20th, 2021 to allow one of the lots to have less than required frontage in the zone. So that's a motion.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Mr. Chase.
Yes.
Mr. Malaby.
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer.
Yes.
Mr. Ganese.
Yes.
Mr. Morrison.
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Mr. Meyer.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the plan as presented pursuant to RSA 676:4, Roman 3, expedited review, with the following conditions. Subject to the owner's signature, Revise the parcel ID numbers on the plan to properly identify the lots as assigned by the assessing department. Parenthetically, the parcel number IDs are currently switched on the plan. Subject to on-site inspection by the town's engineer, establish escrow for the setting of bounds or certify the bounds have been set. Note the approved waivers on the plan. Obtain written approval from the planning director or designate that the GIS disk is received and is operable and it complies with LDCR section 170-24.C. Subject to the receipt of applicable state or local permits relating to the project, conditions precedent shall be met within 6 months. Submission of the appropriate recording fees payable to the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds, including the $25 L-chip fee, recording fees for the Mylar, and the notice of decision.
Mr. Chair.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr.
So do we also need to condition that we need that agreement on the joint driveway to be filed somewhere? Because I don't think we have that, right?
Should put that, the attorney's here, but yeah, put that, I would.
All right, so an additional condition that there be a recording of the appropriate agreement and/or easement for the shared driveway with the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds.
Didn't we do that under the grant waivers? Judge? Wasn't the easements under the grant waivers?
But not the requirement to have
He gave it, but we
recorded.
didn't. We're not requiring them to
you
file
need-
the legal document.
You need the actual
in
legal
case there's
documents to be
issues.
recorded.
Yeah.
So those legal documents will get recorded with the plan at the registry.
I do. Do we need to hold additional escrow for any roadside work in the driveways?
We should for the culvert work.
Okay, so if I could ask for a friendly amendment to establish appropriate escrow as required to complete the project.
Do we have any idea how much that is?
Oh, just to do with the escrow?
Do we have a not-to-exceed number we can throw out there?
I'd have to,
The escrow is usually established afterwards,
I'd have
right?
to see the impact more closely in the pipe. I think it's under 20,000.
Okay, so additional condition to establish escrow for required drainage work at the curb cut, is that what we're doing?
It's actually the culvert crossing the wetland.
Culvert crossing the wetland, okay.
And just
Got that, Liz?
So I'll second that friendly amendment.
And just one other item, again, this may be state, where there is an existing driveway mark on that existing house, that has to be removed in order for them to move forward with this, or not?
Yeah, there's a note on the plan
Okay.
to remove the driveway.
There's a
It's
note,
a
I just-
stipulation also in this DOT permit.
That's what I'm saying, they can't come back and have that driveway too at the end, okay. Yeah, just want to make sure.
Okay, all the friendly amendments accepted as friendly.
Okay, Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Malaby?
Yes.
Mr. Feinhauer?
Yes.
Mr. Grenese?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mr. Corners?
Yes, with the amendments.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Congratulations, it's been approved. Anybody that feels that they've been injured by this here, you have 30 days to request a rehearing.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
So with that, the last item on the agenda is board member comments. Anybody have any comments they would like to make?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Malaby.
I've been serving on the board now as an alternate for the past year. This is my first, for Chris and I, it's our first meeting as full members. They say experience is the best teacher. I know I've certainly learned a lot in the past year, and I want to thank everybody, the members, staff, George, Liz, Owen helping out, and I look forward to the years to come.
Oh, good, very good. Anybody else? Mr. Corners?
Yeah, just want to welcome the new members, encourage someone else or other people to apply for the alternate position. There's always a need. And also just wanted to make a quick comment unrelated to the planning board, but we do have a marathon coming up on the rail trail, April 16th. We are in need of volunteers for that to do the crossings, to be course marshals, just to kind of stand there, help the police cross people safely. It's more than a one-man job, and we need about 22 volunteers. We have about 13 right now, so if you are available for a few hours, we get a large donation towards the rail trail from the company that runs the race, but we do need to provide those marshals to get that, and that does help us improve the trail. So please, if you have time on Sunday the 16th, even a few hours, volunteer.
I see DBW also put in a new crossing.
Yeah, they did. The DPW put in our first set of crossing beacons at South Ave. That was a donation from the Alexander Eastman Foundation. The Rail Trail Board doubled the the donation, and there'll be another set of those crossing beacons at Broadway, but obviously there's a little more work involved in utilities and things that they need to be careful of there. So Mike assures me that it'll be done soon.
Okay, Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, I would also like to welcome the new regular members to the board and thank the returning members for their continued service.
Excellent, very good. With that, do I hear that?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain. We are adjourned. Thank you all so much.
All clear.